VCS02, explain the requirements for a legal veterinary prescription. Within this lesson, the objectives and aims are to cover Learning Outcome 1, 1.f, state the current legal requirements for drug labelling, container requirements and prescription writing. So what is prescribing? Prescribing relates to the means of assessing an animal and deciding upon the best and most appropriate medication to administer or supply to that animal. It is the responsibility of our veterinary surgeons to do this. Who may write a prescription? Only a veterinary surgeon is legally permitted to write a prescription for a product that is pure. What must the person writing the prescription consider? It is really important that they consider the competency of the person who will need to administer the medication. Are they competently of sound mind to understand what is required of them? Are they competently able to do so? For example, is the veterinary surgeon prescribing and writing a prescription for an oral medication for an elderly lady who lives on her own who needs to tablet an aggressive cat? The veterinary surgeon needs to consider this and then choose, alongside the indications of the animal, what is the best procedure and route to use. They must ensure that whoever is going to be using or administering the prescription to the animal is going to use it in the correct manner and for the reason that medication was provided. So real care needs to be taken, particularly in relation to drugs that can be abused. They must provide that client with information about the safe administration, the contraindications and warnings related to the medicine, so that all involved is kept safe throughout the whole process. In what format can prescriptions be provided? So they can be given orally if the person prescribing will then supply or administer, for example, in a consultation with an owner and their pet. In written form, they must be produced in indelible ink. Indelible means that it couldn't be altered or removed or edited, so it must be a permanent form of ink for that format. A written prescription will be valid for 6 months as a general rule of thumb. However, in some situations, the person prescribing may specify a shorter time frame to take into account an animal's condition. So, for example, an animal that was on heart medication might actually only have a prescription that's valid for 3 months in order that they see them regularly to check the status of the pet and to check that the medication at the rate, the dose, the frequency, all aspects of it are working appropriately, because it might be that they need to be altered from time to time. What must be included in a written prescription? This is a task for you to complete. Consider the information that must be provided in a written prescription. I would like for you to produce this as a document that can then be uploaded onto OneFile for your educational assessor to have a look at, to assess your understanding. And I would like for you to self-mark it using your textbooks to check your answers. How long is a written prescription valid for? So they can be valid for up to 6 months generally, unless it states otherwise on the prescription. It can be specified that it can be repeated. If it doesn't specify that it can be repeated, then it can only be repeated once. What is the difference in relation to controlled drugs? Because controlled drugs are substances that could be subject to misuse, we have to take real care when it comes to prescriptions for these. So these are controlled drugs that are listed in Schedule 2 or 3 other than tamamzepam. Prescription for controlled drugs did need to be handwritten. This is no longer the case. They can be typed, computer generated or handwritten, though it must be signed by the person that issues the prescription. A prescription cannot be supplied for Schedule 2 or 3 against a prescription that's been faxed or emailed, and it must contain the following: the address of the prescriber, the total amount or quantity in words and numbers, the form of the drug provided. It legally must include the MRCVS registration number of the veterinary surgeon writing the prescription. The strength of the drug must be specified. Prescriptions for Schedule 2 and 3 are valid for only 28 days. They cannot be repeated, so it must say no repeats. And if necessary for long-term meds, such as epileptic patients, vets must make sure that the owner is competent to administer and safe to administer. Can veterinary practices charge for a written prescription? The answer is yes. This is because we need to charge for the veterinary surgeon's time in what is essentially an administration task, producing the written prescription for a client to actually get the products from elsewhere. Many times the client will be getting the product from an online pharmacy in order to save money, especially if they're purchasing an awful lot of veterinary products for their pet, or if they are particularly expensive. So yes, it is now relevant to charge. We didn't used to do so in years gone by, but many practices do nowadays. And so that you are aware of this for your role in practice, I would like for you to find out what your veterinary practice charges your clients for doing so. Supplying of medication. So it is vital to ensure the person the medication is being supplied to is the owner, and they are accurately advised on how to administer the medication. They're informed of any contraindications or warnings. And in relation to standard operating procedures and relevant staff training would be appropriate to make sure that people do so to the same standard. We must also ensure the person is using the medication for the means in which it has been authorised. If it will not be the veterinary surgeon dispensing the medicine and it is delegated to another staff member, they must be satisfied that the person is competent to do so. And a veterinary surgeon must authorise POMV, POMVPS and NFA VPS. This can be via notes on the card for repeat prescriptions, authorised and requested repeats, and also remember that the practice premises must be registered in the first instance to do so. Dispensing of that prescription by personnel. So they must legally be allowed to dispense. They cannot substitute the medication. It must be that is specified on the prescription. They must ensure that the person who has written the prescription is named on it and that they have the necessary qualifications, and must ensure that the person dispensed to is the owner or keeper. So this relates to our pharmaceutical online companies and also our pharmacies. In summary, within this session you learnt about the following: the legal requirements for drug labelling, container requirements with the emphasis on prescription writing.